All right, good afternoon, everyone. Happy to see all of you here with us. We've got a great group, 30 people, and I'm sure more will be joining us. First of all, welcome to our first Thursday of the month. It is when CSD comes together to talk about our strategic planning and the future. I want to inform everyone that we will be meeting today, and then our session in March is the last one. April, we will not have a session for the first Thursday of the month because of our CEASD conference at the end of the month. I'm sure everyone needs to arrange their plans for the conference, so nothing in April. So this month and March will conclude our sessions. It will be the same consistent format. We have 5 breakout rooms assigned, one for outreach and early intervention, one for language deprivation, another one for least restrictive environment, then diversity, equality, and inclusion, and then the staff shortages. Those are our 5 breakout rooms. I am aware that last session, we started narrowing down some of our goals, and some groups have really already identified their goals. Other groups are still modifying those ideas, and that's all right. The purpose for today and for next month's session will be to discuss the objectives for our goals. Each group should have 4 to 5 objectives tying into their goal. These are objectives that you want CEASD to work towards, to work on. After today's session and next month's session, we will establish our draft goals and objectives. These are items that we will carry forward to the CEASD board. The board will convene the Thursday prior to the conference. We will have an all-day work group for the strategic plan. That will be the board with Chuck Andrew, our consultant from the Clarion group. So he will be working with the board as has happened in the past. We will develop our strategic plan, make sure that we have overlap and that everything is neat and tidy. And then that will be presented to CEASD and the members en masse during our conference. So we've had a lot of great progress so far. We've got 2 more sessions to really hammer everything in and identify what we want CEASD to support in and how. All right, any questions, thoughts before we break out and jump right into it? Looks like everyone's pretty clear on what needs to be done. Awesome. Glad to see that. One last item I'd like to announce before we do break out. We will be breaking out at 1:30, so that gives us about until 2:30. So let's take an hour. We'll reconvene in the main session, and each leader of the breakout session will share out on the goal and the objectives that have been developed so far, or what areas that need support. That way we can plan and look to provide support for next month. CEASD just completed their announcement as far as job responsibilities for the new executive director and that advertisement. As we know, Barbara Raimondo will be resigning as of the conference, and now we are getting word out with a job description to bring in candidates and applicants. Hopefully we will start interviews March, April before the conference, and if everything lines up, we will see where that goes. If any of you know someone who is just an excellent candidate, you know they need to be the executive director, spread the word out. Let's get it out there. All right, and then I just want to make sure for each of our breakout sessions, the leaders are actually here. I know there have been some time conflicts with board members, and I want to make sure we have coverage in each group. So EI and outreach, I do see Dwayne here, correct? Or Luann, excuse the interpreter. Okay, and then Deborah Trapani, perfect. Language deprivation. Who is it again? Amy, perfect, yes. Awesome, we've got that one worked out. Least restrictive environment should be Nancy. Oh, okay, perfect. Stacy will cover that. LRE with Nancy. Yeah, I don't know if she's here, Jeff. That's all right. Okay, as long as we got someone to cover that. Diversity, equality, and inclusion. John's here, perfect. And Jennifer, perfect. Get my names mixed up. You popped up super quick. Hey, Jeff. I do have, there is a question if you'll take a look. And then for our last group, we have Michelle Tanner. All right, perfect. Okay, the breakout rooms are set up. Go ahead and click the breakout room button at the bottom of Zoom and join the respective room. They are labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Join the one you would like to participate in. If you have any issues with jumping into one, go ahead and reach out on the chat and I can actually assign you to a room. There is no data group this session. The data group has broken off into a separate session. All right. Off we go. Have a great session. We'll see you at 2:30. All right. I browsed some of the breakout rooms, great discussions. I saw everyone working on a document, which is a great sign. So first, we'll work our way through each breakout group to expound upon their work and their discussions in summary. Following that, I know some people are asking for time to tidy up their documents. We'll give everyone a week. And so the chair of each group has a week to tidy up their documents. And then we will submit that to both myself and Barbara. We will look at that and make sure that the format is consistent. And then that will be emailed out to everyone. Everyone gets an opportunity to look at what other groups are discussing and proposing. Next month, it seems everyone's pretty narrowed down. There's some groups that still need a little bit of work, which is fine. Next month, we can work in our groups, or maybe there's something we're identifying in another group that we want to share about and speak about. And so we'll look for some overlap next month and some feedback in that direction. I think that would be a great angle for next month. Let's go ahead and start. We've always started with EI, so let's mix it up this time. We'll go ahead and start with educator and staff shortages, if that interpreter wants to take it.
Yeah, I got you, Tony. I'm going to let Michelle share. So the floor is yours. Haha. Okay, funny, David. All right. I just got a bite of crackers. Okay, let me put it to the side. All right, here we go. All right, our group, if you remember, we established our committee, our group a little bit later, but we have been progressing so very well. We have an overarching goal to increase retention and recruitment for schools as a part of CEASD. We developed a goal for retention and a goal for recruitment. And then we have developed some objectives under each of those. So, one is, how are we selling ourselves? We're very negative kind of out there. Oh, there's so many IEP paperwork and meetings and we're burnt out and blah, blah, blah. It's time to stop that. And we need to market ourselves a little bit better. And so we thought, why don't we create like a promo video to send out there to really get people engaged in the field and interested in coming, as well as, having improved partnerships with universities and programs that have deaf ed programs. Also, if CEASD could advocate at the federal level for both retention and recruitment. Honestly, I just have to say we've had great discussions. Anything to add, David? Yeah, so we've done all of these objectives under each of the goals. We did have kind of some duplicates, so we fine-tuned them. Now we are working on the SMART goals that we want to add into what we have now. So we'll have some measurable goals that we'll work on at the next meeting, get those all lined out and get CEASD on the track for all children to thrive.
I love that comment about deaf children thriving. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Let's go ahead and turn it over to diversity, inclusion, and equality.
Okay, I'm looking for Jennifer. No, she didn't run away from me. Usually we do this together, but anyways, I do want to thank everyone in our group. We've had a really good discussion. Here I am. Oh, hey. Again, just really good discussion. Last time we had established 2 goals. The first one being establishing a shared resource mechanism for schools to use and to support one another with DEI in regards to training, curriculum, etc., and encouraging schools to work together instead of operating with that silo mentality. So we discussed that, as well as establishing a mentoring program or opportunities for BIPOC staff, including teachers and administrators, to grow that pool. We also had a long discussion and figuring out about what CEASD can do to support those efforts, because we're looking at school administrators. Now, whether that means training or considerations in doing some sort of, so for example, we currently do a viability study as part of CEASD for those schools who are struggling, needing some ideas, bolstering what they're already doing. So we thought about, what about offering an equity study, offering consultation, some form of study for school administrators. So we did have a long discussion about that. There was also mention about CDOs, meaning Chief Diversity Officers. This is a relatively new field, and there are the handful of schools that have those and are meeting on a regular basis. So talking about current trends, resources, and offering that to other schools to encourage them in that journey. Let me see what else we have here. We also talked about one experience of bringing in a consultant for doing DEI training, that oftentimes those folks are experts in their field, but they don't have expertise in deaf education, which brings an added layer of challenge, meaning that it requires a lot of education to those consultants as they come in to work with us. Jennifer and I also had a lot of emphasis on, while recognizing the importance of the 5 strategic goals, but we do have to back up and recognize that as a board, that in doing that assessment, that DEI training, to ensuring that we're not duplicating our efforts and recognizing DEI as a separate goal. But really, it is nice to have it as one of our strategic priorities, but we don't want to duplicate our efforts. So meaning DEI stands alone, we think that it should be addressed and have a DEI lens with every single part of our goals. So looking at LRE, staff shortages, all of those should include a DEI lens within them. So not having that mentality of it being set up separately, but recognizing that it should be a lens as all of it. So as we meet as a board in person, recognizing that everything should be achieved through a DEI lens.
I've seen other strategic plans where they have different pillars and they call them overarching pillars. And they have that overarching idea where we could include DEI as a concept and how that impacts all of the pillars underneath. And that's something we can discuss during our board session as well. Great, thank you.
No problem, thank you.
Let's turn it over to LRE. Clark, Nancy.
Hi, hello. So Shauna is my lifesaver, and she took all the notes for our group, so thank you for doing that. First, we talked about having a plan of bringing in a lobbyist, somebody who can really work to develop those critical relationships so that we can continue the momentum with LRE on a long-term basis, so that we have that way to feed all of the accurate information about LRE and what needs to be done and what needs to be changed over time. So that led to our next item, which is Child First. We need to continue to pursue that with the new director. So as Barbara retires, the new person that will be stepping up into that role, developing a committee to work on that, and also working in tandem with that lobbyist. Barbara has been functioning in a dual role and moving back and forth between 2 roles. So we need to really make sure we bring on that additional person. In terms of CEASD, We want to develop a relationship and do further networking. We want to make sure that they stay close with us at CEASD, that we're providing them with updated information for the guidelines that they disseminate, the deaf and hard of hearing guidelines that they develop. We want to make sure that the states are actually utilizing those guidelines. Some states really do follow them, others do not. So we want to make sure that there's clear follow through with those guidelines. In terms of data, we want to make sure that we make that critical connection with data so that it becomes part of our talking points on a consistent basis. So really collaborating closely with the data committee and seeing that intersectionality there. Looking down at the chat message, Claire has mentioned that there are many newer people that may not be familiar with Child First, and we have moved that as one of our objectives. We want to make sure that we know what's going on with that, and we'll be discussing it at length during the conference. Is that correct, Jeff? We'll be talking about Child First and what the purpose is behind that. The U.S. Department of Education has many important positions. Often they are advertised and new people come and go. We do want to see people in the field of deaf education applying for those federal level positions so that they ultimately become our ally, so that we can work together between the state and the federal level in tandem with the lobbyists so that it becomes more visible, a true collaborative effort. Also for promoting, thinking about media and how we really can promote the concept of LRE, perhaps having a bus with some kind of design on it promoting the idea of LRE, or possibly setting up billboards, just very simple points that really will entice people to want to learn more about LRE and to talk about it and really what that means for deaf and hard of hearing students. Oftentimes people forget, or perhaps they don't hear about it much, and so they assume that everything is fine. So we really want to feed into that and make it a national issue. Did I miss anything, Shauna? No, really our goal continues to be broad, but we really are striving to develop a new LRE policy at the federal level. That is the bottom line.
Excellent. Sounds good. Thank you for leading that group out. Let's turn it over to language deprivation. All right, Stacy. Can everyone see me okay? All right. Our group had quite a robust discussion. There was just so much to the discussion about things that are happening in schools. We stopped for a minute on that discussion to really think about CEASD's support of school administrators and what we need to do in that scope. We identified a big need to foster the need of urgency and the cross-emergency nature of language deprivation. We feel that that can be addressed in 4 different ways. Those 4 different ways are the objectives and the focus of our objectives. We're looking at training, research, the definition and the language that we use to discuss language deprivation itself, and then lastly, outreach. Through our discussion, one area that we identified that needs more research as it pertains to language deprivation. Just a week or 2 ago, CEASD had a workshop they hosted in regards to research and partnership programs, the RPP session. We thought it would be nice, well, I should back up a little bit. CEASD can develop a position paper about the urgent nature of language deprivation, a call to action for schools and universities to create this RPP partnership, to do more research as it pertains to language deprivation. And with that, we can further identify the definition and identify more critical environments for language development and how we can mimic that structure in different settings across residential, community, school, and home. This is data that we can utilize to really guide training, and CEASD can facilitate that training once we have the data in place. Let me review my notes real quick. We also discussed outreach and partnering with different family organizations to create mentoring programs. We identified that parents learn best from each other. So parent to parent mingling. States have different family organizations. So how can CEASD build partnerships with those family organizations and utilize those to develop more mentoring programs past the birth to 5 age range? It tends to be early intervention, 0 to 5, but beyond that, to the age of 22, how can we support that process? Conference presenters, we want to make sure that we have ongoing presentations related to language deprivation at our conference. We also would like to discuss with administrators and create some training to hearing fragility and how it is okay to have some of those hard conversations about the importance of deaf role models, the importance of immersion in settings and language, such as residential programs, and how can administrators discuss this with families through a recruitment process. So we had a lot of great discussion. Anything else that I missed from our group? This is Jeff. I also had an opportunity to see your discussion, your breakout group. I saw you discussing language deprivation and whether that should be the topic of your group or if there should be a different terminology used there. I saw that part of the discussion and I thought that was great. I would like all the other groups to also consider for next month's session the terminology used for your breakout session. Is that appropriate, or is there a better way to coin that? The strategic plan needs very clear terminology there, so just something to consider for next month as well. Thank you, Stacy. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, last but not least, EI and outreach. Luann?
I believe Deb was going to join us because she's got all the notes. She just left.
No, she shouldn't have left. Okay.
Okay, we should an issue. So, okay, well, we have 4 goals that we've already established at this point. Should we share the 4 goals? Yes, go ahead. Go ahead and do so. Yeah. All right. So developing user-friendly paper or document for families and LEAs, just really elaborating on research and what it means or what we're meaning by user-friendly. So with that said, really accommodating that, accommodating our families that sign, families that prefer in printed English and in Spanish, and having those series there, webinar type of things so that families can choose specific topics that they're interested in. The second would be different models of outreach and early intervention. And that's really going to vary because there are so many models out there, but we would like to have something at a generic level, so a generic model that different states can apply. Most of the people that have joined have a strong outreach program available, and we feel like we need to shift gears a little bit and direct our focus on those that do not have that available, either in outreach or early intervention, and best supporting them so that they can establish something, have that implemented. Developing a centralized hub of resources for our parents and professionals, as well as students. And then we decided that historically speaking, the medical field is something we've often dismissed. They're on their own, but we feel like we really need to bring them in so that we have them close by us. And that's a goal of ours now, is to work closely with the medical providers. Developing a model for early intervention, looking at best practices in that regard. And then the referral system in general, as a whole. Claire, did I miss anything? Scott, feel free to chime in. No, I think that was a great summary. One thing I think is our biggest challenge is this is CEASD, which is a national organization. We're looking at national strategic planning. So we do have to select a model, a way that can identify the important aspects, but not be so specific to any particular state. That said, we do have a little work to do on some of our objectives there. Yeah.
And that really will be true for most of these topics. We had the national scope, and then every state has their own laws and their own interpretation of different strategies and things like that. So how can we establish things in such a way that can foster states to work on a local level to develop these things, but still tie into the national overarching goal? That is a challenge. Very good point. All right. Thank you, everyone, for a wonderful discussion today and your engagement. Honestly, like David has stated, deaf children cannot thrive if we are not engaged and committed to them. I want to thank everyone. Our children will thrive. I hope everyone stays safe and well. Omicron seems to be starting to fly away. It's dwindling down. So hopefully that's a trend that continues. That way we can get back to a little bit more of normalcy. Looking forward to seeing everyone next month. If you haven't had a chance to register for the CEASD conference, I would encourage you to start registration now. The hotels are starting to fill up and they are reaching max capacity. A draft schedule should be coming out soon, this week or next. That way you can take a look at the conference and what it looks like. Some states have to have a schedule in place or an itinerary so that they can arrange their travel. That's coming in the next week or two. Looking forward to seeing everyone get the registration done and have a nice day. Take care.